Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
My son called. Dad, I'm at the police station. My stepdad attacked me and filed a false report. I asked which officer. Sergeant Williams, I said. Sit tight. 20 minutes. I didn't call a lawyer. I showed up in uniform. The sergeant froze. Captain? Hey, Reddit. This is a story I never thought I'd have to tell. A story about the lines we draw, the ones we cross, and the absolute fury of a father pushed too far. Because when the man my ex-wife married laid his hands on my son, my world didn't just stop, it shattered. And then it rebuilt itself around one single truth. You don't touch what's mine. Let me back up and give you the full picture. Because what happened wasn't just one incident. It was the culmination of 2 years of warning signs I'd been documenting. 2 years of gut feelings that something was wrong. 2 years of my ex-wife telling me I was being paranoid and overprotective. Turns out I wasn't being paranoid enough. I'm Daniel Kane, 46 years old, police captain with 23 years on the force. 3 tours in Afghanistan before that. Started as a grunt in Kandahar, worked my way through the ranks. Came home and joined the force when I was 23. Worked patrol for 5 years, made detective at 28, sergeant at 32, lieutenant at 38, and finally captain at 42. Every stripe earned through blood, sweat, and more overtime than any human being should log in a lifetime. You get used to violence in this line of work, to the darkness, to humanity at its worst. I've seen things that would make most people quit. Bodies in alleyways, kids caught in crossfire, domestic situations that ended with someone not walking away. You develop this shell, this professional distance that lets you do the job without falling apart. But nothing prepares you for the bureaucratic nightmare of divorce, especially when your ex-wife marries a man who smiles too much and, in my experience, has secrets he keeps way too well. Always a bad sign. The guys who seem too perfect, too charming, too successful without visible effort, they're usually hiding something. I've arrested enough con artists and manipulators to recognize the type. Victor Harrison was exactly that type. Jessica and I had divorced when Tyler was 12. The marriage had been falling apart for years. My job, the late nights, the constant danger that came with wearing a badge. She wanted stability, predictability, a husband who came home every night at 6. I couldn't give her that. Not while running a major crimes unit. Not while the city's gang violence was spiraling out of control. The divorce was relatively amicable, considering. We agreed on joint custody, split assets fairly, and maintained civility for Tyler's sake. For 2 years, things were fine. Tyler adjusted, spent weekdays with Jessica and weekends with me. We made it work. Then Jessica met Victor Harrison at some charity fundraiser. Successful contractor, owned Harrison Development, one of the fastest growing construction firms in the state. Drove a BMW, lived in a house with a pool, wore expensive suits, and knew exactly what to say to impress a single mother looking for stability. They dated for 6 months before she told me. Another 6 months before they got engaged. I ran a background check. Sue me, it's what cops do. Victor came back clean. No arrests, no restraining orders, not even a speeding ticket. Financially successful, well-regarded in the community, active in local business associations. On paper, he was perfect, but I've learned that paper lies. It's the stuff that doesn't show up on background checks that you have to worry about. The temper he hides in public, the control issues that manifest behind closed doors, the subtle manipulations that don't leave physical evidence. I told Jessica I had reservations. She accused me of being jealous, of not being able to accept that she'd moved on. Maybe she was partly right, but mostly I was a cop with good instincts. And those instincts were screaming that something about Victor Harrison didn't add up. They got married anyway. Quick ceremony, small guest list. Tyler was the ring bearer. I wasn't invited. Jessica said it would be awkward for Victor. That should have been my first real warning. The changes in Tyler started gradually. He became quieter during our weekend visits. More withdrawn. When I asked how things were at home, he'd say fine in that tone kids use when they're hiding something but don't know how to talk about it. I'd probe gently, but he'd clam up. Jessica insisted everything was great. Victor was wonderful with Tyler. They were bonding. Tyler was just adjusting to the new family dynamic. Give it time, she said. These things take time. But time didn't make it better. It made it worse. I was sitting in my office at the precinct on a Tuesday afternoon. The sun was slicing through the blinds like prison bars across my desk. My uniform was immaculate, always is. My posture, military straight, but my eyes, gray as gunmetal, held warmth for exactly 3 people. my son Tyler, my partner of 15 years, and my late mother. Officer Jordan Foster poked her head in. Captain, the mayor's office called again about that community outreach program. Tell them I'll have the proposal by Friday, I said, without looking up. Gang activity was spiking, and 2 of my best detectives were out on paternity leave. Anything else? Jordan hesitated. Your ex-wife called. Said something about Tyler's football game Saturday. Sounded tense. My jaw tightened. Jessica always sounded tense these days, ever since she married Victor Harrison 2 years ago. He was a successful contractor. Way too successful if you asked me. Nobody builds that fast and that profitably without cutting serious corners. I'll handle it. I waved Jordan away and picked up my personal phone. 3 missed calls from Jessica, all within the last hour. Before I could dial her back, my phone rang. Tyler. Hey, champ, you okay? Dad? His voice cracked slightly. Yeah, I'm fine, just... Can we talk? Not on the phone. Tyler was 16, a sophomore. He'd inherited my build and his mother's dark eyes. Kid had been distant lately, and I'd chalked it up to normal teenage stuff. First girlfriends, all that adolescent chaos. But something in his voice triggered that instinct that had kept me alive in Helmand Province. I can pick you up in 20. Your spot? No. His voice dropped. Can you meet me at Uncle Ryan's garage instead? I don't want to be home right now. Uncle Ryan, my younger brother, the only mechanic in the city who could resurrect a '67 Mustang from a pile of rust and regret. Tyler had spent countless afternoons there since the divorce, learning to rebuild carburetors and change timing belts. I'm on my way. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, stopping only to tell my second-in-command, Lieutenant Frank Mitchell, I'd be out for an hour. Frank, a barrel-chested man with 20 years on the force, just nodded. He knew better than to ask questions when I got that look. The garage sat in an industrial area, a forgotten pocket that gentrification somehow missed. Ryan bought it for nothing 15 years ago and turned it into a sanctuary for classic cars and lost causes. The place smelled like motor oil and old metal, with classic rock playing from speakers mounted in the corners. 3 lifts, a full tool wall, and enough workspace to handle 4 projects simultaneously. When I pulled up, I found my son sitting on the hood of a Chevelle. Ryan was restoring, shoulders hunched, staring at his phone. Tyler had his hood up, head down. The universal teenage posture for, I don't want to talk about it. But I'd learned to read my son's body language over 16 years. And this wasn't normal teenage brooding. This was fear. Tyler, he looked up, and that's when I saw it. A purple shadow blooming under his left eye, half hidden by carefully arranged hair. The bruise was fresh, that particular shade that only appears in the first few hours, before the blood really settles and spreads. My training kicked in before my rage could. 23 years on the force, thousands of domestic violence calls, hundreds of assault investigations. I knew what to look for, how to document it, how to build a case that would stick in court. But this wasn't just another case. This was my son. Don't freak out. Tyler slid off the hood, hands raised defensively. It's not as bad as it looks. That's what they all say. Victims of abuse develop this reflex to minimize, to protect their abusers, to convince themselves and others that it's not that serious. I'd heard those exact words from countless domestic violence victims over the years. Never thought I'd hear them from my own kid. I approached slowly, using the same calm voice I'd used in 1,000 tense situations. Let me see. I gently turned his face to the light streaming through the garage's high windows. The bruise was fresh, maybe 3-4 hours old based on the coloration and swelling. Then I saw the finger marks on his upper arm, barely visible under his sleeve where I'd pushed it up. 4 distinct pressure points, thumbprint on one side, classic grab-and-hold pattern. The kind of marks you get when someone with adult strength grabs a teenager hard enough to leave impressions. Tyler, who did this to you? My son's eyes filled with tears, but he was too proud to shed them. 16-year-old boys don't cry. That's what society teaches them. Be tough. Suck it up. Handle it. But standing there in that garage, with bruises marking where a grown man had hurt him, Tyler looked less like the 6-foot linebacker he'd become, and more like the 5-year-old who used to run to me when he scraped his knee. We got in an argument about the game Saturday. Victor wanted me to quit the team, said football was a waste of time, and I should focus on academics instead. I told him you'd never miss my games, and that maybe he should try actually showing up before making decisions about my life. He didn't like that. Tyler's voice cracked slightly. He grabbed me by the shoulders, shoved me against the wall in the hallway, said I was disrespectful, that mom lets me get away with murder because she's too soft, that someone needed to teach me discipline, and since my father was too busy playing cop to actually parent, it fell to him. The way Tyler said playing cop told me those were Victor's exact words. This wasn't just about one argument or one moment of lost temper. This was about a man who'd been building resentment, looking for an excuse to exert dominance over a kid he saw as competition for Jessica's attention. What happened next? I kept my voice level, professional. Document everything. Get the full statement. He kept me pinned there for maybe 30 seconds, just staring at me. His face was all red, veins popping in his neck. Then he said something about how I needed to learn my place in his house. That's when I pushed him back. Just once, just to create space so I could breathe. He stumbled backward, caught himself on the opposite wall, and that's when he really lost it. Tyler touched his eye gently, wincing. He came at me fast. I tried to block, but he got past my guard and punched me right here. Then he grabbed my arms. Tyler showed me the bruises, 4 on each arm, and shook me, hard. Kept saying I disrespected him in his own home, that he wouldn't tolerate insubordination from some punk kid. Insubordination. Military term. Victor had never served. I'd checked his background, but he used the language of dominance and hierarchy, of command and control. Classic authoritarian personality type. These guys see every relationship as a power dynamic where they need to be on top. My blood temperature dropped to somewhere near absolute 0. This was what the old guys called combat calm, that crystalline clarity right before everything breaks loose. Where's your mother? She was at her sister's. She doesn't know yet. Victor told me if I said anything, he'd make sure I never saw you again. That he has friends in family court, that he could prove you're an unfit parent because you're never around. I pulled my son into my arms, felt him shake against my chest. Did you hit him back? No, I left, grabbed my bike and came here. Tyler pulled away, swiping at his eyes. I'm sorry, Dad. I shouldn't have provoked him. I know Mom's happy with him, and I don't want to mess that up. Stop! I gripped his shoulders, making sure he looked me in the eye. You did nothing wrong. A grown man put his hands on you. That's assault. That's unacceptable. But Mom, I'll handle your mother. Right now, I need you to do exactly what I say. We're going to the hospital, getting you checked out. Then we're documenting everything. Tyler nodded, and I saw the trust in his eyes. That absolute faith that Dad would fix this. It was a weight I'd carried since the day he was born, and one I'd carry until my last breath. What I didn't tell my son was that Victor Harrison had just made the biggest mistake of his life, because there were rules in my world, laws I upheld, codes I lived by. But there was one rule that superseded everything else. You don't touch my son. Jessica Harrison, formerly Jessica Kane, stared at her reflection in her sister's bathroom mirror. She was trying to convince herself that the tightness in her chest was just anxiety about Tyler's upcoming football game. You okay in there? Her sister Lauren called through the door. Yeah, just give me a minute. She splashed cold water on her face. At 43, Jessica had aged gracefully. Yoga, expensive skincare, and the comfortable life Victor provided. She'd married him because he was everything Daniel wasn't. Present, attentive, financially stable without the constant threat of a bullet ending it all. No more 3 a.m. calls about officer-involved situations. No more waiting up wondering if her husband would come home alive. But lately, something had been off. Victor's temper, which had seemed so controlled during their courtship, had started showing cracks. Small things at first. Snapping at waiters, road rage, complaints about Tyler's attitude. She'd written it off as stress from work, from adjusting to being a stepfather. This morning's argument had been different, though. Tyler had talked back about the football game schedule, and Victor's face had gone dark in a way that scared her. She'd left before it escalated, told herself she was overreacting. Her phone buzzed. Daniel. Her stomach tightened further. We need to talk. It's about Tyler. Can you meet me at County General in 30 minutes? County General? Is he okay? What happened? Just meet me there, Jessica. Now. The hospital exam room was sterile and cold. Tyler sat on the paper-covered bed, while a doctor documented his injuries. I stood against the wall, arms crossed, watching everything with the methodical attention I'd honed over 2 decades of investigating crimes. Dr. Patricia Wong was thorough. She photographed the bruises from multiple angles, measured the contusions, noted the defensive marks on Tyler's forearms where he'd tried to protect himself. The bruising pattern is consistent with manual strangulation attempt around the upper arms and force applied to the facial area, she said quietly. I'm required to report this to Child Protective Services. I'm already filing a police report, I said. I'm a police captain. This is my son. Dr. Wong's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry you're going through this, Captain Kane. But protocol is protocol. I understand. Do what you need to do. Jessica arrived 20 minutes later, bursting through the door with Lauren right behind her. Tyler! Oh my God, what happened? She rushed to him, her hands hovering over his face, like she was afraid to touch him. Victor did this, I said flatly. Jessica froze. What? No, there must be a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Mom, Tyler said quietly. He grabbed me, shoved me into the wall, then punched me when I pushed him back. Jessica's face crumbled. But Victor wouldn't. He did, Jessica, I cut in. And I'm filing charges. Assault on a minor, domestic violence. Potentially more depending on what CPS finds. You can't! Jessica turned on me, eyes wild. This will destroy him. His business. His reputation. He should have thought of that before he put his hands on our son. Lauren stepped forward, putting a hand on her sister's arm. Jess, look at Tyler's face. Look at what he did. Jessica seemed to crumble then, sinking into a chair. I didn't know. I didn't see this coming. He's been stressed, but I thought... You thought what? I asked, my voice harder than I intended. That it was okay for him to take his stress out on Tyler? That boys should just toughen up and deal with it? No, of course not. Jessica looked up at me, mascara running. I thought I was protecting Tyler by giving him a stable home, by giving him a father figure who would actually be around. That stung, but I didn't take the bait. Tyler already has a father. What he needed was for his mother to protect him from an abusive stepfather. The silence in that room was crushing. Tyler sat on the exam table, looking smaller than his 6-foot frame suggested. Jessica crying quietly in the chair. Lauren standing between us like a referee. And me, feeling the cold fury that had carried me through war zones settle into something more dangerous. Absolute resolve. My phone rang. The precinct. Captain, we've got a situation, Jordan said when I answered. Victor Harrison just showed up at the station claiming Tyler attacked him. He's got some bruising on his ribs and he's demanding to file charges. He's also claiming you threatened him. Of course he did. Smart move, actually. Get ahead of the narrative, play the victim, muddy the waters. Keep him there, I said. I'm on my way. I looked at Jessica. Your husband just showed up at my precinct trying to file charges against Tyler for assault. You need to decide right now whose side you're on, because this is about to get ugly. Jessica looked at Tyler, at his bruised face, at the evidence of what her husband had done. I need to talk to Victor. There has to be an explanation. There is no explanation that makes this okay, I said. But you do what you need to do. Tyler's coming with me. The precinct was a controlled chaos when we arrived. Victor Harrison sat in interview room 2, playing the injured party with an Oscar-worthy performance. I could see him through the one-way glass, carefully disheveled, holding his ribs like they were broken, his face arranged in a mask of righteous indignation. He'd changed clothes since the incident, now wearing a button-down shirt and slacks, looking respectable, looking like the victim. Jordan filled me in outside the observation room. He claims Tyler attacked him unprovoked this morning around 10 a.m. Says the kid has had anger management issues for months, that there have been multiple incidents of verbal abuse and threats. He's demanding charges be filed for assault and battery, and he's threatening a civil lawsuit for emotional distress and medical expenses. Did he mention the part where he's the one who assaulted a minor? He says Tyler attacked him first, and he was defending himself. Claims any injuries Tyler has are from Tyler falling during the altercation or from Tyler hitting himself to make it look like Victor hurt him. He's got an explanation for everything. Classic abuser playbook. Reverse victim and offender. Establish an alternative narrative. Get your version on record first. I'd seen it 1,000 times. The difference was that most abusers weren't smart enough to show up at a police station within hours of the incident to control the narrative. Victor was smart. That made him more dangerous. Where's Frank? Already in there taking his statement. Captain, you know you can't be involved in this investigation. You're too close. Any defense attorney worth their salt will claim bias, conflict of interest, compromised objectivity. She was right, and I hated it. Standard protocol when officers or their families are involved. Someone else handles the investigation to maintain integrity. But it meant watching from the sidelines while someone else built the case against the man who'd hurt my son. Then who's handling it? Lieutenant Mitchell assigned it to Detective Karen Stevens. She's on her way in now. Should be here in 20. Karen Stevens, 15 years in Special Victims Unit, specializing in domestic violence and child abuse cases. Tough as they come, thorough as hell, and wouldn't buy Victor's performance for a second. She'd seen enough liars to recognize one when she saw it. If anyone could nail this case down tight, it was Karen. Good. I want everything by the book. Every procedure followed exactly. No shortcuts, no assumptions, nothing that could be challenged in court. This case needs to be airtight. I turned to Tyler, who'd been silent since we arrived, just watching everything with those dark eyes that looked too old for 16. Champ, Detective Stevens is going to interview you. Tell her everything exactly as it happened. Don't embellish, don't leave anything out, just the truth. Can you do that? What about Victor? Let me worry about Victor. Through the glass, I watched Frank Mitchell continue taking Victor's statement. My second in command was good at his job. Calm, professional, letting suspects talk themselves into corners. Victor was animated now, gesturing with his hands, building his story with the confidence of someone who thinks they're smarter than the people investigating them. He's saying Tyler has been increasingly aggressive lately, Jordan reported, listening to the audio feed through an earbud. Claims there have been incidents where Tyler threatened him, destroyed property, showed violent tendencies. Says Jessica has been in denial about Tyler's behavioral problems because she doesn't want to admit her son needs help. Every word Victor spoke was another nail in his own coffin. Because we had medical evidence that contradicted his timeline, witness statements that disputed his version of events, and physical evidence that told the real story. But Victor didn't know that yet. He thought he was winning. Karen Stevens arrived 30 minutes later, short, compact, with the kind of intensity that made suspects nervous. She reviewed the medical photos, read Tyler's preliminary statement, and studied Victor through the glass for a full minute before speaking. He's good, she said finally. Confident, consistent, has answers ready, but he's too rehearsed. Real victims hesitate, second-guess themselves, show emotional responses that match trauma. He's performing. Can you break him? Won't need to. Medical evidence will do it for me. Those finger marks on Tyler's arms don't lie. The bruising pattern, the force required to leave those impressions, it's not consistent with self-defense. It's consistent with a grown man using superior strength against a minor. She turned to me. Captain, I know this is hard, but I need you to trust me to handle this the right way. No interference, no pulling rank, no attempts to influence the investigation. Can you do that? Yes. Good. Yes. Because this case is going to trial, and when it does, I want conviction, not a mistrial because of procedural violations. What Victor Harrison didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that I'd spent 23 years learning how to build cases that stick. I knew every loophole, every defense strategy, every way a halfway decent lawyer might try to poke holes in evidence. So while Detective Stevens methodically interviewed Tyler, documenting his statement with the precision of someone who testified in court hundreds of times, I made calls. First to CPS. The report from the hospital would trigger an investigation, but I wanted to make sure they understood the severity. Tyler's caseworker, Patricia Mendez, had worked with me on several cases over the years. She knew I wouldn't call unless it was serious. Captain Kane, I got the hospital report. I'm so sorry about Tyler. I need you to prioritize this one, Patricia. The perpetrator is my ex-wife's husband, and he's currently at my precinct trying to file charges against Tyler for defending himself. There was a pause. That's bold. He's a narcissist with money and a good public image. He thinks he can manipulate the system. Let him try. I'll have an investigator at your ex-wife's house within the hour. If there's evidence of ongoing abuse or an unsafe environment, we'll move fast. Second call was to my ex-wife's sister, Lauren. Of all Jessica's family, Lauren was the only one who'd ever really understood why our marriage fell apart. She'd been through her own divorce from an emotionally abusive husband, and she recognized the signs. Lauren, I need you to keep Jessica away from Victor until this gets sorted out. Don't let her go home. Don't let him convince her to meet somewhere. He's going to try to manipulate her. Already on it. She's staying at my place tonight. Daniel. She's in denial. She keeps saying there must be a misunderstanding. She'll come around. She just needs time to accept that she married someone who abuses kids. Third call was to my brother Ryan. I need you to keep Tyler tonight. Somewhere Victor doesn't know about. The cabin upstate? Perfect. Don't tell me exactly where. Just go. You think he's going to come after Tyler? I think he's going to realize his victim card isn't working and get desperate. And desperate men do stupid things. Detective Stevens finished Tyler's interview around 7 p.m. She found me in my office, closing the door behind her. Captain, I've got enough to charge Harrison with assault on a minor domestic violence and child endangerment. Tyler's statement is consistent, detailed, and matches the medical evidence perfectly. And Harrison's statement? Full of holes. He claims Tyler attacked him in the kitchen this morning, but he can't explain why Tyler has bruising that's consistent with being shoved against a wall or why there are finger marks on his arms. He also claims he was too injured to call police immediately, but somehow managed to drive himself to the precinct an hour later. Did you ask him about threatening Tyler? He denied it. But here's the interesting part. When I asked him about his relationship with Tyler in general, he got defensive. Started talking about how Tyler disrespects him, undermines his authority, turns Jessica against him. Classic abuser mentality. It's everyone else's fault but his. What about the bruising on his ribs? Stevens pulled out her tablet, showed me photos. Defensive injuries. Consistent with someone shoving him away. Tyler's account of pushing him back once matches perfectly. So what's your recommendation? Arrest him. Tonight. Don't give him time to lawyer up, spin a story, or intimidate witnesses. We have probable cause, we have evidence, and we have a victim who's credible and consistent. I wanted to feel satisfaction. Instead, I just felt tired. Do it! They arrested Victor Harrison at 8:47 p.m. I watched through the glass as Frank Mitchell read him his rights. Victor's face cycled through shock, outrage, indignation, all the emotions of someone who genuinely believed he'd get away with it. This is insane, Victor shouted. I'm the victim here. That kid attacked me. Mr. Harrison, you have the right to remain silent, Frank said calmly. I'd suggest you use it. I want my lawyer. This is harassment. I know my rights. Your rights include the right to an attorney. You'll be allowed to make a phone call from booking. They led him out in handcuffs, and I felt a grim satisfaction watching him realize the gravity of his situation. This wasn't going to be smoothed over with charm and money. This was real. My phone rang. Jessica. Daniel, they arrested Victor. They're saying he assaulted Tyler. This is a mistake. It's not a mistake, Jessica. He did exactly what Tyler said he did, and now he's facing the consequences. Sure, but the police came to the house. They took photos, looked through everything, asked me all these questions about our relationship and how Victor treats Tyler. That's CPS doing their job, protecting children from abusers. Victor's not an abuser, her voice cracked. He's a good man who made a mistake under stress. Good men don't beat children, Jessica. Good men don't threaten teenagers to keep them quiet. Good men don't try to manipulate the system by filing false charges. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, what happens now? Now? Victor gets arraigned. He'll probably make bail unless the prosecutor argues he's a flight risk or a danger to Tyler. Then it goes to trial, assuming he doesn't take a plea deal. And Tyler? Tyler stays with Ryan tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out a more permanent arrangement. But he's not going back to that house while Victor has any access to him. That house is my home too. Then you need to decide if you're going to stand with your son or your husband, because you can't do both. She hung up without answering. Victor Harrison made bail the next morning. $50,000, posted by his business partner within an hour of arraignment. The judge added conditions. No contact with Tyler, no contact with me, stay away from Jessica's residence, mandatory GPS monitoring. I knew those conditions wouldn't hold him for long. Men like Victor didn't accept defeat. They retaliated. Jordan found me at my desk reviewing case files. Captain, you need to see this. She handed me her phone. Victor's Facebook page, posted 20 minutes ago. Being falsely accused of child abuse by a vindictive ex-husband who can't accept that his family has moved on. The truth will come out. Justice will prevail. False accusations. Fathers, rights, truth matters. The post already had 43 shares and hundreds of comments. Half supporting him, half questioning why a successful contractor would need to abuse anyone. He's building a narrative, Jordan said. Playing the victim publicly. Let him. I handed back her phone. Every public statement he makes is potential evidence. He's digging his own grave. But I was more concerned about what Victor was doing privately. Men like him didn't just accept humiliation quietly. They plotted revenge. I called Ryan. How's Tyler? Quiet. Keeps asking if Victor's going to come after him. Tell him Victor's under GPS monitoring and has a restraining order. He's not getting anywhere near Tyler. What about you? You think he'll come after you? Probably, but I'm harder to intimidate than a 16-year-old kid. What I didn't tell my brother was that I was hoping Victor would come after me. Because if he violated the restraining order, if he made any threats, if he did anything stupid, I'd have even more ammunition to ensure he went away for a very long time. The call came 3 days later at 2:47 a.m. Dad? Tyler's voice was panicked, breathless. Victor found us. He's at the cabin. Ryan called the police, but he's trying to break in. Put Ryan on. My brother's voice came through, strained. Daniel, he's got a crowbar. He's trying to get through the back door. Police are 15 minutes out. Barricade yourselves in the bedroom. Put the dresser against the door. Do not engage with him. I'm on my way. I was already moving, grabbing my service weapon from the safe, my keys, my phone. The cabin was 2 hours away. Police were 15 minutes out. Math said they'd handle it before I arrived, but I wasn't taking chances. I called Frank Mitchell. Victor Harrison just violated his restraining order and GPS monitoring. He's at my brother's cabin trying to break in with Tyler inside. Units are en route, but I'm going to. Captain, you can't. I'm going, Frank. Have someone pull Harrison's GPS data for the past 72 hours. I want to know how long he's been planning this. The drive was a blur of back roads and rage-fueled calculations. How did Victor find them? Ryan had been careful. No social media check-ins, paid cash for everything. Someone must have followed them, or Victor had connections I didn't know about. By the time I arrived, 3 patrol cars were already there. Victor was on the ground in handcuffs, shouting incoherently about his rights and false accusations. The back door of the cabin showed damage, splintered wood where he'd tried to pry it open. I found Tyler and Ryan inside, both shaken but unharmed. He was screaming that Tyler ruined his life, Ryan said quietly, that we all conspired against him, that he was going to make sure Tyler paid for what he'd done. Tyler sat on the couch, arms wrapped around himself. I heard him say he was going to kill us all. Then you. Then himself. He said if he couldn't have his life back, no one would have anything. The responding officer, Sergeant Williams, approached me. Captain Kane, we've got him on breaking and entering, attempted burglary, stalking, and violation of the restraining order. The district attorney is going to want to add terroristic threats based on what the kid heard. GPS data? Already pulled it. He's been circling this area for 6 hours, probably trying to figure out which cabin was the right one. There are 12 in this area. He must have been checking them one by one. 6 hours of stalking. 6 hours of planning violence. 6 hours that would look absolutely damning in court. Is he lawyered up yet? His attorney's on the way. James Porter. Heard of him? Unfortunately, yes. Porter was expensive, ruthless, and specialized in defending the indefensible. He'd gotten guilty clients off on technicalities more times than I could count. This case is airtight, I said. Make sure every procedure is documented, every statement recorded, every piece of evidence photographed and logged. Porter's going to look for any mistake, any oversight, anything he can use. Already on it, Captain. Victor Harrison's arraignment the next morning was a spectacle. James Porter argued vehemently for bail, claiming his client was under extreme emotional distress, that the previous charges were false, that Victor posed no real threat to anyone. The prosecutor, Assistant DA Rachel Morrison, countered with the GPS data showing 6 hours of stalking, Tyler's statement about death threats, and the physical evidence of attempted forced entry. Judge Patricia Martinez wasn't buying Porter's performance. Mr. Harrison, you were out on bail with explicit conditions including GPS monitoring and a restraining order. You violated both by tracking down your stepson to a remote location, attempting to break into the residence, and making threats against multiple individuals including a minor child and a police captain. Bail is denied. You'll remain in custody pending trial. Victor's face went purple. This is insane. I have rights. I'm being persecuted. You have the right to remain silent until your trial, Judge Martinez said coldly. I suggest you exercise it. As they led Victor out, he locked eyes with me. The hatred there was pure and undiluted. This wasn't over, not for him, but he just guaranteed his own conviction. The trial took 4 months to start. Porter tried every delay tactic in the book. Motions to suppress evidence, motions for change of venue, motions to separate the charges, and hold multiple trials. Judge Martinez denied them all with increasing impatience. When we finally got to court, the case was even stronger than I'd anticipated. The prosecution had everything. Medical evidence from Dr. Wong, Tyler's consistent statements across multiple interviews, the GPS data showing Victor's stalking pattern, the physical evidence from the cabin break-in attempt, witness testimony from Ryan, neighbor statements about Victor's temper, and my own testimony about Victor's escalating behavior and threats. The prosecution called 14 witnesses over 6 days. Each one added another piece to the puzzle, another brick in the wall they were building around Victor. Dr. Wong testified about the medical evidence, the bruising patterns, the force calculations, the timeline that contradicted Victor's version. Ryan testified about the cabin incident, describing in detail how Victor had stalked them for hours before attempting to break in. Neighbors testified about hearing loud arguments, seeing Tyler leave the house upset on multiple occasions. Porter's defense strategy was predictable but desperate. Paint Tyler as a troubled teen with anger issues, suggest I was manipulating my son to get back at Jessica's new husband, imply that Victor's actions at the cabin were a desperate cry for help rather than genuine threats. He brought in a psychologist who testified about oppositional defiant disorder in teenagers, suggested Tyler's behavioral issues were being overlooked by a permissive father. It fell apart on day 3 when the prosecution played the 911 call from the cabin. Ryan's voice, steady but urgent, describing Victor trying to break in. Then, faintly in the background but unmistakable on the cleaned-up audio, Victor shouting, "I'm going to kill all of you! You destroyed my life! Tyler, you're dead! You hear me? Dead! And then your cop father!" The jury's faces said everything. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a cry for help. This was a dangerous man who'd threatened to murder a child, his brother, and a police officer. Several jurors looked visibly shaken. One woman in the back row wiped her eyes. Tyler testified on day 4. He was nervous, but solid, dressed in a button-down shirt and tie, looking younger than his 16 years. I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching my son face down the man who'd hurt him. It took everything in me not to intervene, not to stand up and take over, not to protect him the way every fiber of my being screamed to do. But Tyler didn't need protecting. Not anymore. He needed to tell his truth. The prosecutor, Assistant DA Rachel Morrison, walked him through the events methodically. What happened that morning. What Victor said. How he grabbed Tyler. The punch. The threats. Tyler's voice stayed steady throughout, never wavering, never embellishing. Just the facts, exactly as they'd happened. "Did you attack your stepfather that morning?" Morrison asked. "No, ma'am. He grabbed me first and shoved me against the wall. I pushed him away once to create distance so I could get out of the hallway. That's all." "Why did you go to your uncle's garage instead of calling the police immediately?" Tyler looked down at his hands. "I was scared. Victor told me if I said anything, he'd make sure I never saw my dad again. He said he had friends in family court, that he could prove my dad was an unfit parent because of his job. I believed him." Porter tried to shake Tyler on cross-examination, but my son held firm. Every question Porter threw at him, Tyler answered calmly and consistently. It was clear Porter was getting frustrated. The kid wasn't breaking, wasn't contradicting himself, wasn't giving him anything to work with. "You expect this jury to believe a 16-year-old athlete couldn't do more damage if you really wanted to fight back?" "I wasn't trying to fight, sir. I was trying to get away. There's a difference. Your father taught you self-defense, didn't he? Police techniques, combat training from his military service? He taught me to defend myself if necessary and to de-escalate when possible. That morning, I de-escalated by leaving. Convenient that you went straight to your uncle's garage where your father could be called to see your injuries." "It's not convenient, sir. It's where I felt safe." Porter had nothing. Tyler's testimony was unshakable. Jessica testified for the prosecution, which surprised everyone, including me. Lauren had spent weeks talking to her, helping her see the reality of what Victor had done. By the time she took the stand, Jessica was ready to tell the truth. "Did you see any signs of abuse before the incident with Tyler?" "Not physical abuse. But Victor had a temper. He'd snap at Tyler over small things. He'd make comments about Tyler being disrespectful or spoiled. I thought it was just adjustment issues. Normal stepfather-stepson tension. I was wrong." "Do you believe your son's account of what happened?" Jessica's voice broke. "Yes, I believe Tyler, and I'm ashamed I didn't protect him better." The verdict came back after 8 hours of deliberation. Guilty on all counts. Assault on a minor, domestic violence, stalking, attempted burglary, making terroristic threats, violation of restraining order. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Martinez listened to impact statements from Tyler, from me, from Jessica. Then she handed down her decision. "Mr. Harrison, you systematically abused a minor child in your care, then attempted to manipulate the legal system to avoid consequences. When that failed, you tracked down your victim to a remote location with the intent to harm him and others. You have shown no remorse, no understanding of the severity of your actions. I'm sentencing you to 25 years in state prison, no possibility of parole before 18 years. By the time Victor Harrison got out, if he survived prison that long, he'd be 68 years old, broken, irrelevant, and no threat to anyone. 6 months after the trial, Tyler's bruises had faded completely. He made varsity football, started dating a girl from his chemistry class, and began talking about college. The nightmares came less frequently. The fear in his eyes was gone. Jessica moved into an apartment 2 blocks from mine. She and Tyler were rebuilding their relationship slowly, with honest conversations and the acceptance that trust, once broken, took years to repair. But they were trying. That was enough. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.